Hi, I'm Hazel. They say you should forgive your family, but how do you forgive the people who looked you in the eye and chose front row concert tickets over your seizure medication? When I collapsed alone in my bedroom, they were downstairs popping champagne, celebrating my sister's big night. The worst part wasn't that they canceled my prescription. It was that they smiled like I didn't even exist. What kind of mother signs a fax that could get her daughter killed and then posts a picture holding VIP passes? And now, suddenly, they want to talk. But what do you say to people who only hear you after the verdict? But what hurts more is knowing this wasn't the first time. And I still don't know if it'll be the last. Would you like to know how far a family will go to silence the one they were supposed to protect? I woke up to the sound of my own breathing, shallow, shaky, uneven. The sheets were bunched at my ankles, damp with sweat. My pillow was halfway off the bed. That low, fuzzy static sat in the back of my skull like a warning light, an aura. Anyone who's lived with epilepsy knows it. You don't need a clock when your brain becomes one. It was 6:42 a.m., on the dot. My seizures liked routine. I sat up slowly, trying to fight the dizziness that came with it. My hand reached instinctively to the drawer next to my bed, where I kept my daily meds. I unscrewed the cap, empty. That wasn't right. I always kept track. I checked the bottle again, even tipped it upside down. Not a single tablet. Confused, I padded barefoot into the kitchen. My mom was already there, sipping coffee, scrolling on her iPad like any normal Tuesday. I didn't say anything right away, just opened the cabinet where we usually kept my refill bag. Gone. "Mom," I said, voice dry. "Did my seizure refill come yet?" She didn't look up from the screen. "About that," I waited. "We had to cancel it. Insurance stuff." "You know how it is." She waved a hand like I was asking about switching laundry detergent brands. My stomach dropped. "You what?" My voice cracked. Not from emotion, pure confusion. "Why didn't you tell me?" She finally looked at me, only briefly. "Well, Callista's concert is this weekend, and the VIP tickets were more than we expected. We had to move things around. It's not like you have a seizure every day, Hazel." It was too surreal to be offensive. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misunderstood, that maybe this was some weird early morning dream. But then my dad walked in, coffee in hand, and added, "Just take half doses. It's not like you're running a marathon." I stood there in my own kitchen, next to a granite countertop we couldn't afford without insurance discounts, and realized they did this on purpose. They made a choice. Callista walked by right then, all eyeliner and curls, headphones in, and humming to herself. She didn't even look at me. Back in my room, I called the pharmacy. The woman on the other end was kind but firm. "Your refill was canceled by the primary account holder," she said. "I can't override it without their permission." My jaw locked. "I'm 20. I'm legally an adult." "I understand, miss, but the plan's still under your mother's name." I thanked her and hung up before she could apologize again. My phone buzzed with a new notification. I opened Instagram. Dreams do come true. So excited for the At That Neon Soul tour. Thank you, Mom, Dad. #VIP access. Best parents. #blessed. Callista, of course. 2 tickets, front row. The post was time-stamped exactly 5 minutes after the refill was canceled. I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it over. Face down. The rest of the day passed in blurs. I skipped class. Couldn't focus anyway. Tried to talk to my dad again, just once. He told me, "Stress makes your condition worse. You should calm down." At dinner, no one said a word about it. Callista talked about what she'd wear to the show. Mom asked her if she needed her hair done professionally. Dad chimed in about parking near the arena. I didn't speak. I couldn't have if I tried. My hands were shaking under the table. I held them together in my lap, trying to keep them still. By 9 p.m., I was in bed, curled sideways, blanket over my head like it could block out the world. My heart thudded out of rhythm. Not from seizure activity, just panic, just betrayal. There's no medication for that. I tried to write. I journal when I can't process things aloud. But the words wouldn't come tonight. Instead, I opened an old entry from 2 years ago, when I first got my prescription. Mom said we'd always put health first. Said no matter how tight things got, she'd never risk my safety. Guess we all say things we don't mean. Around midnight, the memories started surfacing, times they skipped my checkups. When Mom gave my emergency fund to Callista for her cheer camp. When I had to ask a friend to buy my seizure alert bracelet because it was out of budget. This wasn't the first time. I stared at the ceiling. The fan spun in perfect circles. My brain didn't feel that organized. It felt like it was short-circuiting. The aura came back, stronger this time. I clutched my pillow and counted. 4 seconds, 8, 12. It passed. I checked my glucose monitor. Not because I needed to, but because it gave me something to control. Maybe I'll be lucky and wake up tomorrow. The ceiling above me shifted in and out of focus. For a few seconds, I couldn't tell if it was morning or just another version of dark. My cheek was pressed to the cold tile floor, and the pain running down my left side told me I'd had a seizure sometime in the night. I moved slowly, testing each limb before trying to sit up. My muscles screamed with protest. The air smelled faintly of old detergent and cinnamon from the candle I forgot to blow out. That candle was now on its side, wax hardened against the baseboard. Dragging myself toward the bed, I used the dresser to pull myself up. My legs wobbled like branches in wind. I sat on the edge of the mattress for a long while, not crying, just waiting for the fog to lift. It didn't. When I finally made it to the kitchen, the house was already alive. Dad was watching the news, half listening while scrolling his phone. Mom had her hair wrapped in a towel and was blending a smoothie. I said nothing at first, just stood there, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. Then I spoke. I had a seizure last night. Mom didn't even turn around. Did you eat enough yesterday? Dad glanced at me but said nothing. His eyes dropped back to the phone. I'm serious, I continued, voice firmer. I woke up on the floor. Mom poured the smoothie into her pink Yeti cup. Well, Hazel, when you forget to take care of yourself, these things happen. Maybe lay off the caffeine. And don't skip meals. Skip meals? I hadn't eaten dinner because I was afraid of triggering a seizure on a near-empty dose. But none of that mattered here. Logic didn't live in this house. Image did. Are you hearing yourself? I said, quieter now. I didn't skip anything. I didn't have my medication because you canceled it. That's not fair, she snapped, finally turning. We had to make choices. Life isn't always convenient, Hazel. Dad finally spoke. You're bringing too much drama into the week. Callista has enough on her plate without you spiraling. It took everything I had not to scream. Instead, I stared at both of them. You think I'm doing this for attention? No one responded. I walked away. Back in my room, I sat down on the floor. Not because I was weak, but because I needed the ground beneath me. Needed to feel something solid. Bits and pieces of the night flashed back. The lights, the static behind my eyes, the way my shoulder hit the dresser on the way down. I remember clutching at the floor, trying to reach the nightstand, but failing. Then, nothing. Just dark. No one had checked on me. No one had even noticed. Callista, from what I later saw, had been live-streaming her concert wardrobe options. Her voice shrill with excitement as she twirled in outfit after outfit. One clip showed her dancing in the hall, my hall, at the exact time my seizure must have happened. While I was unconscious, my sister was modeling. While I convulsed alone, she was talking about whether her heels clashed with her dress. I opened my laptop and started typing into my journal. They won't come unless I bleed on the floor. I paused, then kept typing. Apparently, even then, it would depend on whether the carpet stains. I closed the screen. I couldn't sit still. I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and dialed my neurologist's office. The recording reminded me it was Saturday. The clinic was closed. Of course, I checked my emergency pill box. 2 tablets. Just 2. And even those were nearing expiration. They should have been refilled over a week ago. That meant the cancellation wasn't impulsive. It was planned. It wasn't some last-minute shift. They had discussed it, made that call, and moved on like I was a bill they could skip. The hallway smelled like Callista's hairspray. I knew she'd just finished curling her hair, probably getting ready for another rehearsal or content shoot. I listened. She laughed. That same high-pitched, breathy laugh she always used when she was being recorded. It didn't sound real anymore. I sat back down by the window. The sun was sliding into late afternoon, casting orange strips across my desk. I stared out, watching two kids ride their bikes down the sidewalk. Their mom stood at the edge of their driveway, arms folded, watching them closely. My chest tightened, not from anger this time, but envy. "You think I'm quiet because I'm weak," I whispered, almost surprised at how steady my voice was. But I wasn't quiet. I was just calculating. The air in my room felt heavier that morning, like the walls had leaned in overnight. I sat there for a long time in silence, watching light stretch across the carpet through the blinds. Something had shifted in me the night before, not dramatically, not with fanfare, but like a door that quietly clicks shut behind you. I knew, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to admit before, that I was done begging to be seen. I pulled my laptop into my lap. There was a sociology paper due Tuesday, but the cursor blinked on a blank document for 15 minutes straight before I typed anything. I tried to focus on the assignment prompt, but my mind wandered, not to the usual distractions like Instagram or music, but backward. It started with a smell, sun-baked leather. I blinked, and suddenly I was 11 again. We were at a strip mall in Van Nuys. It was late June, easily over 100 degrees. Mom and Dad had taken Callista into some boutique for school clothes. I'd asked if I could go too, but they said I'd just get bored and left me in the car with the windows cracked. I remembered watching people pass by outside, some looking at me and continuing on, others not noticing at all. I had a book in my lap, but I wasn't reading it. My arms felt too heavy. I kept thinking I just needed to lie down. Then the black spots started, floating like gnats in my vision, and my hands began to twitch. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember is waking up on the sidewalk with a stranger kneeling over me, pouring water from a Dasani bottle onto my forehead. My parents came running a minute later, wide-eyed and breathless. Mom kept saying, "We were only gone 10 minutes, like that made it less awful." At the hospital, they called it probable heat stroke and sent us home with Gatorade and a shrug. I knew then I'd had some kind of episode, but no one followed up. There were no neurologist appointments, no tests, no mention of it again. When I'd brought it up years later, after my diagnosis, Mom had laughed softly and said, "You were always a dramatic little thing." I hadn't thought about that day in years, but now I couldn't stop, because it matched. All of it. Then and now, I wasn't someone they took seriously. I was a sideline, a problem to contain, not solve. I closed the laptop and leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I could still feel that little girl version of me, clutching a copy of The Secret Garden in a baking hot car, trying to be good so she wouldn't be left behind again. And she had been, over and over. I stood up and grabbed an old shoebox from the back of my closet. Inside were journals, doctor's notes, 2 unused prescription pads, a collection of letters I never mailed. Proof. Of what? I didn't know. Maybe that I existed. Maybe that I mattered once. I flipped through one journal entry dated just last year. Missed dose again. Mom said we'd catch up next month. Don't feel right. Headache hasn't gone away in 2 days. Another one from when I was 16. Told Dad about the twitching in my fingers. He said I should use less screen time. I closed the book. My chest felt tight, not like a seizure, but like a realization pressing down. I wasn't imagining this. I never had been. I opened my phone and drafted a message to Mom. "Why didn't you believe me back then?" I stared at the screen for a while, my finger hovering over send. But I never hit it. Not because I was afraid, because I finally understood she didn't have an answer, and I didn't need to give her another chance to fail me. I deleted the draft and set the phone aside. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Record. Inside, I saved PDFs of every prescription I'd ever been denied, screenshots of every insurance denial, every voicemail saying, "We can't refill without your guardian's consent," even though I was over 18. I added images of my pill organizer, marked empty, next to calendar dates that aligned with Callista's trips, photo shoots, and brand deals. It was no longer about convincing them. It was about not letting myself forget. By evening, I'd gathered most of what I needed. I slid a small pouch into my tote. ID, insurance card, medical summary, flash drive with the folder. My hands were steadier than they had been in days. That night, I didn't eat dinner with them. Mom yelled upstairs, "Hazel, we're ordering in! Ty, okay?" I didn't answer. Callista's voice filtered up behind hers. "Tell her not to be so moody. Everyone's tired." I sat by the window instead, sipping water slowly. Outside, porch lights came on one by one like fireflies in rows. Inside, my world got quieter. I said it aloud, not to anyone, just to the air around me, the same way you might talk to a ghost. "That was the last time I nearly died for your comfort." And I meant it. The reflection in my mirror didn't blink for a while. I just stood there, toothbrush idle in one hand, the other gripping the edge of the sink like it might fall away from the wall. There wasn't anything extraordinary about that Monday morning. The sky outside my window was clean and blue, like California in early May often is. Birds chirped in the oak tree outside our kitchen. I could hear Callista's voice from down the hall, laughing at something on speakerphone, probably her manager, but inside me, things had rearranged. After getting dressed, I packed my bag with just the essentials, my laptop, charger, 2 old notebooks, and a granola bar I didn't have the appetite for but brought anyway. My body still ached in spots from the seizure, and I moved slower than usual, but my thoughts were crisp, focused. I took the bus to campus instead of driving. It gave me time to think, to plan. No music, no distractions, just me and the low hum of tires on pavement. At the library, I found an open desk near the back window and plugged in my laptop. The sun glinted off the monitor as I typed in the URL for my health insurance portal. I logged in using the credentials I'd had memorized for over a year. Access denied. I tried again, slower. Same result. I clicked the Forgot Password link. A message popped up. A reset link has been sent to the primary email on file. My stomach twisted. I already knew. But I clicked open my inbox anyway. Nothing. I waited 2 minutes, then 5. Still nothing. I opened my phone and dialed the customer service line. A young-sounding woman answered, chipper and polite. "Hi, I'm trying to access my insurance account and... Can I get your name and date of birth, please?" I gave it to her. Waited. A pause. "Okay, I'm seeing your profile, Hazel, but it looks like the primary account holder has changed the email and phone contact associated with this plan. Do you have permission to access this account?" I stared at the wall behind the desk. A faded bulletin board. Some note about Mental Health Awareness Week. "I'm 20, I said flatly. "It's my body. I'm the patient." "I understand," she said, and she sounded like she meant it, but still. "We're legally bound by the permissions on file. I'm really sorry." "Who changed the contact info?" I asked. She hesitated. "I'm afraid I can't disclose that." "I already know who did," I muttered. "Thank you anyway." I ended the call before she could say she was sorry again. Back in high school, they called that parental overreach. In real life, it's called control. I sat there, fists clenched in my lap, heat crawling up my neck. She didn't just cancel the refill, she locked me out completely. Mom didn't just make a choice, she made it permanent. My phone buzzed. A text from Callista. "Do not post anything stupid this week. My sponsorship deal depends on clean PR." I didn't reply. I just screenshotted the text and saved it in a new folder titled Receipts. Back on my laptop, I began opening every document I had. Past prescriptions, denial letters, the last neurologist summary. I scanned and saved them, one by one. It wasn't about keeping records for sentiment. It was evidence now. I paused. Opened a new email. To Campus Legal at Pasadena University. Edu. Subject, need help. Medical access revoked by parent. Body. Hello, my name is Hazel. I'm a 20-year-old student on my parents' insurance plan. My medication was canceled without my consent, and I've now been locked out of my own account. I need to know what my rights are and what steps I can take. I hesitated only once before hitting send. When I got home, the house was too quiet. That was never good. Silence here meant someone was plotting or pretending nothing was wrong. Both were equally dangerous. Mom was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables. "Hey, sweetie," she said without looking up. "Don't stay up too late tonight. Big week for Callista, remember?" I walked past her, said nothing. Upstairs, I printed the denial notice from the insurance site and folded it neatly in thirds. I walked back down, placed it gently on the kitchen table, and slid it to the center. Mom looked at it, didn't say a word, just went back to slicing cucumbers like she was prepping for a picnic and not participating in medical negligence. Later that evening, I sat alone in my room with my laptop open. I didn't need music or background noise. I just stared at my own reflection in the black screen. This was the line, not loud, not flashy, but final. I stood up and faced the mirror, eyes locking with the girl I used to be, the one who kept hoping for change. "You took away my access," I said, barely louder than a breath, but not my voice. And for the first time in years, I believed myself. By the time I came down for breakfast, the house was already buzzing with the kind of energy I recognized all too well. Callista energy. Mom was in the kitchen, chopping strawberries like she was auditioning for a cooking segment. Dad was at the dining table, reviewing what looked like a social media engagement report, because that's what parents apparently do now when your sister is a local influencer. I didn't even sit down. I wasn't hungry, not for food, and certainly not for another performance of perfect family theater. That's when my phone lit up with a message from Marin. "Turn on Channel 7, now." I stepped into the living room and picked up the remote. As soon as the screen came on, I saw her, Callista, flawless as ever, seated in a velvet chair, sunlight catching the glint of her styled curls. The headline at the bottom read, "Rising star Callista Monroe talks family, fame, and facing adversity." The segment was already in full swing. Callista was smiling sweetly. The reporter leaned in, asked something about what grounds her. "My family," Callista said with a soft sigh. "We've been through a lot lately. My younger sister's had some challenges, but we're doing everything we can to support her." I froze. Then came the voice I recognized even more than my own. Mom's. The show cut to a pre-recorded clip. "She's always had trouble handling pressure," Mom said gently. "We're just trying to help her the best we can. We love her. But sometimes love means hard choices." Hard choices? I sank onto the edge of the couch, heart pounding. They were rewriting history on live TV, framing me as the unstable one, the liability, the burden they had lovingly endured. "Hazel?" Mom called from the kitchen like nothing had happened. "Do you want some fruit?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I got up, went straight to my room, and pulled my laptop into my lap. I opened a blank folder and titled it, Truth Archive. First, I downloaded the video of the interview and clipped the part where they talked about me. Then I started collecting everything else. Emails from doctors, appointment cancellations, the insurance login denial, even the screenshot of the refill rejection from the pharmacy. I included the text from Callista threatening me not to ruin her brand week. Each item went into a subfolder, labeled by date. By the time I was done, it was past noon. I hadn't spoken a word to anyone since breakfast. I hadn't needed to. I printed one copy of the interview transcript and highlighted Mom's quote. Then I wrote one sentence across the top in red pen. "Don't make me prove what you did." That night at dinner, I waited. I sat at the table, quiet but present. Mom served lasagna. Callista passed the bread like she hadn't just broadcast a lie to half the county. I waited until we were halfway through the meal. Then I asked, "Why did you say that about me on TV?" The silence was instant, like someone had cut the audio feed on our lives. Mom didn't look up. "Say what, sweetheart?" I pulled out the paper, slid it across the table. She read it, blinked. Context matters, she said at last. People don't always understand the nuance. It wasn't meant to hurt you. It did, I said. And it was dishonest. Callista cut in, voice sharper than I'd heard all day. You're being petty. This week is huge for me. I can't have you blowing it up with your episodes. My head tilted slightly. You mean my medical condition? Callista rolled her eyes. Don't make this about you, Hazel. It's not always about you. I leaned back in my chair, calm. If you or Mom lie about me again publicly, I'll release everything. Every form, every screenshot, every receipt, including the insurance access denial. Dad cleared his throat. You're being dramatic. I looked him dead in the eye. No. I'm being strategic. The air around the table shifted. Mom's hand gripped her fork a little tighter. Callista scoffed, muttering something under her breath about how I never let anything go. I stood. I don't want to be part of this show anymore, I said. So you all can smile for the cameras. I'll stick to the truth. I carried my plate to the sink, rinsed it quietly, then walked back to the staircase. At the landing, I paused, turned, and added one last line. If I lose anything else because of you, I'll make sure the whole world hears what really happened. Upstairs, I placed the transcript in my journal, slid it between pages filled with dates, dosage records, and quiet observations. Then I turned out the light and sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at the screensaver of a lake I'd never been to, but always dreamed of. Outside my room, laughter tried to resume, Callista cracking a joke, Mom pretending everything was normal, but a line had been crossed. And I wasn't the same girl on the other side of it anymore. By the next morning, the silence in the house had a different texture to it. Not the usual fragile peace that hovered after a blow-up. No, this was tighter, like a balloon stretched too far, waiting to burst. I didn't say good morning when I passed my mother in the hallway, and she didn't say it either. I didn't expect her to. She was on her phone, mumbling something about image control and timing, probably talking to Callista's PR rep. I skipped breakfast, grabbed my bag, and headed straight for campus. I had a tutorial shift in the writing lab that morning, but I barely remembered helping anyone. My mind kept circling the same loop. What would they say next? What lie would be repackaged, rephrased, reshaped to make me look like the broken one again? At noon, I checked my email in the quiet corner of the library. There it was. Subject: Congrats on the feature. Beautiful piece. From Brand Partnerships at Ridgeview Wellness. Come. I blinked, opened the email. They were thanking Callista for the essay, the one I'd written about growing up with epilepsy. My exact words. Whole paragraphs lifted directly from the piece I'd submitted for Professor Liu's narrative medicine assignment last fall. She hadn't even bothered to change the opening line. That night in the hospital, when I counted ceiling tiles to avoid thinking about dying alone, she had quoted that memory, my memory, as hers. I called her immediately. She didn't pick up. Instead, I got a text a minute later. Busy. Brand call. What's up? I didn't answer. I opened the folder on my laptop that held the original draft. Date stamped. Submission receipt from my professor. Feedback from the TA. Proof. I drafted a short email to Ridgeview Wellness. Subject: Urgent. Misrepresentation in recent partnership feature. Body: Dear Ridgeview Wellness, I believe there's been a misunderstanding regarding your latest campaign content. The story submitted under Callista Monroe's name was originally written by me, Hazel Monroe, as a first-person essay for a university course in 2023. Attached are the original documents. Please review and let me know how you'd like to proceed. Sincerely, Hazel Monroe. No threats, no drama, just the facts. I attached the files and hit send. Then, I did one more thing. I logged into the campus publication portal and submitted my essay for online release. Within 2 hours, it was accepted and posted, featured even. The editors added a short note about authentic student voice and narratives that matter. I shared the link on my barely used social media with a caption that said only, "My voice, my illness, my words." That evening, back home, I kept my door cracked open on purpose. I wanted to hear the fallout. It didn't take long. By 6:45, Callista burst into my room, her phone still in her hand. "What did you do?" she hissed, barely holding back. "Do you have any idea what this could do to my contracts?" I leaned back in my chair. "I sent an email." "You don't get it. This isn't about you anymore, Hazel. This is about optics, about visibility. I need this." "No," I said calmly. "You needed to ask. You needed permission, and you needed to not steal from someone just because you thought they were too quiet to fight back." "You're ruining everything," she snapped. "You don't think this affects the whole family?" "I think the whole family decided what mattered, and it wasn't me." At that, Mom appeared in the doorway. "Girls, please," she said. "Let's not escalate this. Hazel, it's just PR." I turned toward her. "You mean lying about my story, my illness, and my trauma is just PR?" She sighed. "Can't you let it go? We didn't think you'd mind. You're not exactly public." "I didn't mind," I repeated, voice still level. "I didn't mind having my story stolen, my face erased, and my name replaced with hers?" "Sweetheart, don't be so sensitive. You're not a brand. Callista is. These things work differently." My hands clenched at my sides, but I didn't yell. Instead, I stood, walked over to my desk, and closed my laptop gently. Then I turned to them. "You wanted the spotlight," I said. "Let's see how bright it gets." I watched them both blink. Callista's jaw tightened. Mom said nothing, just pulled her cardigan tighter over her chest like it was armor. They left my room without another word. I waited until the hallway quieted, then reopened my laptop and started drafting a timeline. Every date, every discrepancy, every shift in language and tone between my original piece and the one she claimed as hers. And when I was done, I clicked save. It wasn't revenge, it was truth. And for the first time, I had the strength and the voice to carry it. That night, I barely slept. But I wasn't tired. The kind of energy running through me wasn't caffeine or adrenaline, it was something sharper, something steadier. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like I had the floor. By mid-morning, my phone was already buzzing non-stop. I figured someone had seen the College Journal repost, or maybe the sponsor had pulled the campaign. But it was something else entirely. Callista had gone live. The caption read, "Addressing the misunderstanding. I love my sister." I didn't click it right away. I let it play muted while I brushed my teeth. She was crying. Of course. Her makeup was perfect, the lighting soft. I unmuted just long enough to hear. "This has all been a huge misunderstanding," she sniffled, staring directly into the lens. "Hazel's been through a lot, and we're trying our best to support her. I love her so much, but this public shaming? It's unfair to everyone." My jaw tightened. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the comments scroll faster than I could read. Half the viewers were sending her heart emojis and telling her how brave she was. The other half weren't buying it. Didn't she say last week that Hazel needed to stay in her lane? Where's Hazel's voice? Where's the actual essay? Let's compare. I didn't post anything right away. I waited, let the dust swirl a little longer. Sometimes you don't need to shout. You just wait long enough for someone else to stumble. I didn't have to wait long. By early afternoon, a clip surfaced from 2 months ago, a live stream. My cousin Ava, 14 years old and chatty like most teenagers with a ring light, had accidentally let something slip. "Callista got VIP tickets," she'd gushed, flipping her hair. "My aunt said they had to skip Hazel's meds to afford them, but it's like once in a lifetime, right?" The clip had maybe 10 likes when it first surfaced. Then someone reposted it with subtitles. Then someone else overlaid Callista's crying apology on top of it. Then a third person slowed the audio down and added receipts. By 6 p.m., the video had 2.1 million views. The internet was doing what it did best, pulling things apart until truth spilled out. People dug up everything. My name was trending locally. Threads about medical neglect, about the ethics of sponsorship, about what it means when a family decides which daughter deserves to be prioritized. I didn't need to scream. I just had to let them talk. I was sitting in the library when the next message came in. An anonymous email. Subject, from someone who saw too much. Attached was a scanned image, and internal facts from the pharmacy, the cancellation order, my mother's signature. Dated 3 days before my seizure. I stared at it for a long time, not angry, not even surprised, just done. I forwarded it to the health law advocacy group I'd emailed earlier, copied the college paper's editor, attached everything I'd been compiling. I ended the email with one sentence. This is what happens when families choose image over integrity. When I walked into the house that night, the living room looked like the back room of a crisis management agency. Mom on the phone, pacing, Callista yelling upstairs about lawyers. Dad holding his head in his hands. They didn't notice me walk in. I didn't care. I went to the kitchen, made a sandwich, took my time. When I passed back through the living room, they finally looked at me. You can't just throw us under the bus, Mom hissed, covering her phone. I didn't, I said, calm as ever. You did that all by yourself. Callista stood at the top of the stairs, red-eyed, arms crossed. You didn't want to fight. Then why burn everything down? I turned toward her. I didn't want war, I said. I wanted meds. I didn't wait for a response. Upstairs, I sat down at my desk and pulled open my inbox. It had 23 new emails. I skimmed most of them, offers to speak, media inquiries, random support from strangers. Then I saw one that made me pause. Subject, feature request, The Monroe Story. From Rachel Lynn, Senior Editor, Chronicle Weekly. Body, Hazel. We've been following what's unfolding online. We'd like to talk. Off the record first, if you prefer. RL. I stared at the screen, letting her words settle. There it was. The line they had spent years trying to keep me behind. I'd crossed it. And now, let the world watch. Marin met me outside the courthouse just after sunrise. The air was still cool, crisp in a way that reminded me of the fall semester, when everything felt like it still had time to be saved. She handed me a coffee and didn't ask how I was. She didn't have to. We walked in together, no entourage, no camera crew, just two women carrying truth like armor. The courthouse was smaller than I remembered from jury duty last summer. Same beige walls, same plastic benches, same worn carpet, but this time, it felt like everything meant something. We passed a group of people gathered near the entrance, murmuring softly. I caught snippets. That's her. That's the sister. She's the one from the clip. I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes forward. Inside the hearing room, my parents were already seated. Mom wore her pearls. Callista looked like she'd cried in the car. Dad didn't make eye contact. There were no lawyers, just a judge, a clerk, and a few observers. Community members, maybe reporters. This wasn't a criminal trial, not yet. It was a civil hearing to determine whether the family that had revoked my medical access and publicly distorted my life should still hold any power over it. The judge called the session to order. I stood when prompted. He asked if I had any materials to submit. I nodded once, pulled the folder from my bag, and handed it to the clerk. Inside, the pharmacy fax with my mother's signature canceling the refill. A USB drive containing the viral video of my cousin's live stream, my insurance access logs, and an audio clip, 15 seconds, recorded from my own phone. The judge clicked play. Mom's voice filled the quiet room. She's not dead, right? Don't be dramatic. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds after the clip ended. I looked over at her. She had gone pale. Callista looked frozen, like someone had unplugged her battery. I kept my voice even. I was unconscious for 3 hours, I said. My blood sugar had dropped below 40. I lost bladder control. I woke up alone. That same night, they popped champagne to celebrate Callista's concert tickets. I paused, letting the weight of that sentence settle. They said I was dramatic, but you can't fake brain scans or blood panels or seizure logs. Or scars. The judge looked down at the papers again, then back at me. "Do you wish to remain on their insurance plan?" he asked. "No, Your Honor," I said. "I'd like full emancipation for medical decisions and access to state resources. I've already applied for assistance through student health." He nodded. "Granted." The gavel came down. A light sound, but to me, it was thunder. I stepped outside 30 minutes later into a completely different air than I'd walked through earlier. The sun had climbed higher, warming the stone steps. People were waiting again. Some I knew, most I didn't. Marin stood behind me, letting me take it in. Microphones were extended. Cameras clicked. A reporter asked the question I knew was coming. "Hazel, do you want to make a statement?" I stepped forward, took a breath. "I'll speak," I said. "But not for your headlines." I looked at the woman who had asked, then beyond her, to the young girl holding a sign that read, "Believe Chronic Voices." I pointed. "I'll speak for her, and the others like her, the ones still unheard." And I turned, walking down the stairs not with anger, but with clarity. The rest of the day moved like a flood. My phone didn't stop buzzing. The Chronicle Weekly article was already live. Health advocacy groups reposted it. A state senator shared it with a quote about the need for reform in parental insurance control for adult dependents. Emails poured in, messages, invitations. But around 4 p.m., I shut it all off. I logged out, put the phone face down. Marin came by with sandwiches and silence. We ate on the patio behind my apartment. The light hit the fence just right. "You okay?" she asked eventually. "Not yet," I said honestly. "But closer." She nodded. I checked the mail before she left. Inside was a plain envelope. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. I opened it slowly. A note. From my father. We didn't know how far it had gone. We were trying to manage things the best we could. "Your mother, she thought you'd understand. We hope you can forgive us." No apology, no ownership, just a hope for convenience. I folded it once and set it inside the drawer with my old Seizure logbooks. The paper might yellow, the ink might fade, but I wouldn't forget. 2 months had passed since the courthouse. The headlines had cooled. The interview requests slowed. The angry texts from my mother had stopped entirely, replaced with silence thick enough to mistake for peace. And in that space, wide, quiet, almost holy, I started something that resembled a life. I moved into a small studio apartment on the edge of campus. The ceilings were low and the paint chipped in places, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, I didn't dream of hospital ceilings or blinking monitors, just quiet. That was enough. Most mornings now began the same way. I brewed coffee while classical music played low in the background. I sat at my tiny desk, secondhand but sturdy, and answered emails for the nonprofit where I'd started working part-time. The organization focused on chronic illness advocacy for young adults, helping them navigate everything from medical bills to transportation access. I never thought I'd find peace in policy forms, but knowing each document might spare someone what I endured gave it meaning. One Tuesday, I led a small workshop at a community center just outside town. The room smelled faintly of old books and lemon floor cleaner. 10 chairs were arranged in a half circle. I expected maybe 4 people to show up. 15 came. We talked about dependent medical access, what it means to not hold the keys to your own survival. Some in the room had scars. Others still had questions they'd never had the words to ask. A mother, maybe in her 40s, lingered after the session. Her eyes were red. She waited until everyone else had left before approaching me. "My son's had seizures since he was 9, she said quietly. I thought he was exaggerating most of it. I didn't know how serious it was. Until your story. I almost ignored him." She took a breath. "Not anymore. Thank you." I didn't hug her. I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't. I just nodded. That was enough. That night, I returned to my apartment and made myself a grilled cheese sandwich, burned slightly on one side the way I liked it. The windows were open, letting in the smell of summer jasmine from the complex's courtyard. I curled up on the old couch, scrolling aimlessly, not looking for anything in particular. That's when I saw the email from my lawyer. The subject line, mail forwarded from previous address. Attached was a scan of a letter in familiar handwriting. Hazel, we saw the news about your workshop. We hope you're doing well. We understand if you're not ready to talk. We hope you find what you're looking for. No names, no apology, just hopes. I stared at it for a long moment, then closed the screen. There was a small wooden shelf next to my bed where I kept the things that reminded me who I was, not who they said I was. I placed a printout of the letter next to an empty orange pill bottle and a folded sheet of paper titled Emergency Contacts that no longer listed anyone from my family. They hadn't apologized, and I didn't need them to. One Friday afternoon, Marin dropped by with iced coffees and sarcastic commentary about dating apps. "You're glowing," she said, tossing her bag onto my couch. "It's just the caffeine," I replied. She laughed, took a sip, and said, "No, you're doing it. You really are." I looked out the window for a moment. "I still hear the echoes sometimes," I said softly. "The things they said, the way it felt to be optional." "Yeah," she said, "but now you know those echoes aren't yours." I nodded. "Exactly." Later that night, I opened my laptop and drafted a post, not for press, not for applause, just for the people still living in the fog. They called me dramatic. They said I was too sensitive. They told others I was unstable. But I'm still here. I survived. And I speak for those who are still being silenced. That's enough for me. I hit publish, then closed the laptop. Outside, the wind shifted through the jasmine again. Inside, everything was still. And I was free. Sometimes the loudest strength is the one that chooses truth over revenge. Hazel didn't expose her family for sympathy. She did it to reclaim her voice, her story, her life. This wasn't just about medication. It was about value, who gets protected and who gets sacrificed in silence. So let me ask you, have you ever had to fight for your place in your own family? If this story moved you or made you think of someone you know, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real, emotional stories like this one.